But I mean, feedback as well. I've spoken to some studio owners, and you say, "Oh, have you asked for feedback recently?" They're like, "Oh no, I'm scared to." And I think then the question is, why are you scared?
Yeah,
and that the answer to that is probably why you need to ask for feedback.
There's a bigger reason. There's a bigger reason, definitely.
We're coming in hot today with the 10 traits of a successful gym owner. This has come from, the last year we have worked with a select number of studio owners, but we've spoken to hundreds. And obviously our whole newsletter is, predominantly gym owners or aspiring gym owners. And we've noticed that there have been some patterns along the way for those that have, seen a lot of success, and those that perhaps aren't living up to their potential. So we thought today would be a good episode to go through the 10 traits of a successful gym owner, so that maybe if you're listening to this and perhaps you feel like you're not quite living up to any of these, it's a nice friendly reminder from two friendly brothers on how to operate a studio successfully, or at least what we've found from some of the stuff that we've learned in the past. So we've got 10 of them. Jack, how do you feel about this? I mean, you're going on no sleep at the moment, so
yeah, I'm pretty moody.
Oh, are you moody? Wow, are you going to get into it?
I'm all right. I'm looking forward to it. Not a lot of sleep. Kids ill, like everyone's kids this time of year, but won't complain, Jake. We're gonna dive into it.
We're gonna go in.
And I'm excited about it because a lot of these relate to hospitality, and we have become heavily obsessed with hospitality over the last kind of year. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it.
I think it's good timing because a lot of this stuff is that we're gonna enjoy a little bit of a rant. You've had no sleep. My tire blew last night, so we haven't had the best start to the week. So you're gonna hear it channeled through this podcast today.
God, get ready.
Are you ready?
Get ready. Okay, number one.
Yeah. So number one. There's no particular order in any of these, but I think you just touched on it there. Is that a successful gym owner always puts their clients first? And this might sound kind of simple, and a lot of these might sound a little bit.
It's like, guys, why are you giving me this type of advice?
Yeah. But I think what we've found, again, from speaking to some studio owners and just seeing some stuff happen in front of us that maybe we don't necessarily agree with, is that some studio owners don't put the clients first, and they actually, invest in things that perhaps aren't client centric, like, the best ski erg, spec, when actually they could spend a little bit more money in terms of, their events and things like this.
There's a few things that I think we can do better, actually. So I've reread our favorite book on hospitality, Jake. And there's a few things I think we can do better. So right now, like in terms of client experience when they're here, one of the things I love us doing is fist bumping them out the door, right? Yep. Fist bumping, pat on the back, out the door. But I've noticed, I've been in a few sessions with our guys lately, and they're doing an amazing job. But in our next coaches meeting, I want to bring a few things up. Number one is every time someone walks in the door, I want them to said, hello, how are you, and their first name. That's going to be really important. Sometimes our guys are preoccupied in getting the room set up again. People come in and suddenly everyone's in for the warm up. It's like, oh, hi guys, and a group hello happens. I want an individual hello for every single person along with their first name. And look,
a real kind of effort to remember names as well.
Yeah. And a fist bump on the way in. I want to add that because I think that's important. Even in the warm up, just going around and fist bumping everyone saying, morning or evening, whatever. That's we're going to add that in. And the final thing was, if there is a new challenger, making a big thing about introducing them to everyone in the room.
Yeah, really good idea.
That actually got brought to me by a member this morning who we had a new challenger in the session. And she said, you guys are terrible for introducing. You need to introduce the new person to us all. I'm like, you are absolutely right. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So it was too late at that point. It would just look weird. So that's something that we're going to bring up. So that new person can be introduced to every single person by name. And that new person could be introduced to the group. I think that will really help with their experience, especially early on.
Great point.
So there are three things that we're going to change and bring up in our coaches meeting.
Well, I think just to summarize as well, it's important to understand when you own a studio, you don't necessarily own a fitness business, you own a service business. So you have to go all in on client and customer service.
You own a community.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think when you go into it with that approach of like, I'm going to put all of my clients first.
Yeah.
Then obviously you're going to have a great business.
Well, we had to tell our CFO yesterday in a meeting that we're $3,500 over the event budget.
Yeah.
And that's because we love events, and it is the biggest thing. We say it on the pod all the time.
Yeah. Moving on to number 2, it's not just about your wallet. Obviously, as a studio owner, as a business owner, you have to have an eye on your finances, and it's got to, be worthwhile for you and understand that. And you've got to, take your distribution and all that kind of thing. But I think the online fitness industry especially has almost conditioned personal trainers to look at their business like it's on a monthly basis. Do you know what I mean? Like the amount of people that were just sold on things like make an extra 5K a month, or, if I could only do this, it would mean that I could add another, grand a month and I could be on $2,000 a month. It's like, it's no longer about you when you own a fitness studio. It's about your clients. And it's not really about you when you own an online personal training business either. But I think the problem with that whole industry is that it's almost made people it's made people just only lust over their bank account and what they can bring in every month. The amount of people we speak to saying, yeah, I've worked out if I could do this.
I hate it. Oh God, I hate it. I hate that whole language.
Yeah. And 2K a month, 3K a month.
No, it's not even so much about that. When new studio owners go into studios, they still think like a personal trainer, and I think that's really dangerous. So what I mean by that, nothing against personal trainers. I've been one for 15 years. But what I'll say is no one's done a cash flow forecast. No one's done a profit and loss projection. None of this has happened.
No.
So what happens is they don't understand that there's going to be losses.
Yeah.
And that's even with our launch at Halstead, right? That's fully coached with all the cost involved, distribution, everything for the first year. I think we're going to have $9,000 in losses. I think our projection told us for the first year. And that is pretty safe. But we know if we lose $9,000 for the first year, we're on track with what we projected. Mm-hmm. But the problem is I see
this short-term mindset.
I see so many coaches, and they fall into but I just need 2 more challenges to make sure I can pay that or break even or not go into my overdraft. And I'm like, this stuff you need to figure this stuff out. This should have been figured out months ago.
Yeah.
You should know it's coming. So yeah, it's right. It becomes way too transactional when you start saying and thinking like that.
But what the problem is as well is that when that comes as a surprise to you, where perhaps you make a loss in your first month or whatever, and there isn't the plan to then actually build the business long term, you start making decisions based on that loss.
Yeah.
So you start going into defensive mode where it's like, oh, I'm going to have to stop my ads this weekend because I don't know how I'm going to be able to pay for them. Yeah. It's like, actually, you should know how you're going to pay for them because it should have all been projected in and factored in.
People make a bad studio owner makes decisions based off last month's data.
Yeah.
In terms of what they're going to do going forward, bad thinking is, oh, my cost per lead was too high last month. I'm going to turn them off.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, because it's just scarcity. So yeah, it's a big one. It becomes way too transactional, and no one is ever prepared as they should be.
Yeah, agreed. Number 3 is no cutting corners. So a successful gym owner does not cut any corners. An example of this is, like that old saying, mutton dressed as lamb. You could have a great, shiny looking, amazing studio on the front, and from what people can look at and perceive. But if you then skimp on other aspects of the business, like we just mentioned, the client experience, the product, the coaches, if you underpay your coaches, if you buy rubbish equipment that breaks after a week, and all of these little things that you don't do just because you want to throw all of your money and time and investment into actually making something look good, instead of actually forcing something to be good through other investment, that's when I think you start to fall down as a studio owner. So I put here those examples of skimping on equipment, underpaying coaches. We've always said our 2 greatest assets in terms of Revamp's long-term growth is the community, which compounds, but it's also the coaching. And if we underpay coaches, or if we find coaches that we kind of have a feeling aren't quite up to it, then the majority of the time, our community, which is one of our biggest assets, is spending their time with our other biggest asset, which is coaches. And if either of those aren't aligned, then obviously the business crumbles. So
yeah, they can move each other up and down the scale, can't they?
Yeah, 100%.
I've got nothing to add to that.
So yeah, just invest in your team, product, and everything will pay off in the long run. Number 4, this is actually my big. If I could put this one first, then I would, because I think this is the one that comes up time and time again, and something that we learned very early on, not just in terms of owning a studio, but in terms of owning our other businesses, where accountability is key. So I used to be that guy that if I remember like years and years ago, I was that kind of 17, 18-year-old kid who owned a social media marketing agency, and I had maybe 2 or 3 clients. And there, maybe 1 or 2 of those clients that used to really, really piss me off. And I used to get really annoyed, and I was, I'd send them back something. I'd say, well, this is, you should have done this, or you should have read this. And oftentimes what I failed to realize was actually everything, if I was still taking their money, then I was accountable, right? So I needed to make sure that anything that went wrong wasn't a reflection directly of them, but a reflection of me. And when you shift that mindset to seeing everything as your fault, and what can you do to avoid that from happening again in the future, even if you believe it isn't your fault there in the moment, I think that's huge. So I've just put it here as number 4, accountability is key. We've heard examples of people saying, oh, my software is slow, it doesn't seem to be working, like why can't they just fix it? Or Jill never told me she was struggling with her fitness at the moment, so how was I supposed to know? But instead, if you just kind of like flip that around and say, okay, how can I know whether somebody in my member base is struggling? Like,
what can I build to be able to find out quicker?
What systems do I need to actually
to be informed?
And again, like, it's such an easy switch, but the minute you make that, and the minute you see everything as your fault, and the minute you take sole accountability over everything, is actually when the business starts to get better. And I think that's one of my biggest ones that I've noticed from studio owners that we talk to, where I think perhaps, again, going from this kind of personal trainer mindset to this business owner mindset, where you have to then look at stuff less emotionally and more on an objective basis.
Yeah, too many owners look outwards, not inwards.
Yeah, and so, again, there's that saying again, like misery loves company. So the more you express, negativity, the more you're going to attract people who also love to talk negative, and it all compounds to a point where then suddenly you feel like the world's against you.
Yeah.
And you don't actually take that responsibility to get out of it. So yeah, accountability is key, is my number 4. Agreed?
Yeah, like it. Number 5, Jake.
Number 5 is delegate with confidence. This is something I actually think we're really good at.
We've got better at it.
Yeah. I think, again, if you're a studio owner, the likelihood is that you used to be a personal trainer, right? A lot of the people we speak to are personal trainers or fitness coaches.
There.
Yeah. And as a result of that, they're very, very passionate about fitness coaching, right? And personal training. Obviously, we are as well, like, don't get me wrong, but I think what we are good at is actually looking past our own ego in a way and seeing the long-term growth of the business and how it isn't necessarily solely reliant on us two. And well, it can't be solely reliant on us two, because the business won't get to a point where we want it to get to. So I think one of the things that we've become really good at is just delegating, making sure that everybody has what they need in order to fulfill on the tasks at hand. Because we're not just kind of giving people stuff to do and being like, get on with it.
You can't delegate without structure.
No. Yeah. So
without communication.
So that's one thing I think we've become good at, and again, something that most successful studio owners are also good at is just having that confidence in their own team and knowing that it isn't all about them, and actually there are certain areas, certain skill sets that people might have that you don't possess, which in turn can make the business better. But it's about giving people that chance.
Just to add to that, I think the cool thing is to back that point up is if you were to ask any of our team whether they think we're good at delegating and making things really clear and concise, I think they would all say yes. Like Henry, would you say yes to
pressure?
That? Yeah. Yeah.
He's doing these
Gladiator 2.
I'm doing Gladiator 2 style.
Yeah, exactly. So that's obviously a big win for us.
Cool. Number 6 is focus on big outcomes. And I think that is all about asking the right questions. I think you can always see somebody's potential based on the questions that they ask. So when somebody kind of spends a majority of a coaching call, for example, with us, asking, things like, what time should I post that email out? Or what time should I post that on social media? Or, how do I make the button look like that instead of this? Those questions aren't really going to move the needle. Whereas the ones that ask, okay, what is the goal that I'm looking to achieve here? Or like, what is the purpose of this marketing campaign or whatever that we're trying to do? And I think those people that ask those questions tend to do better because they act on first principles, right? It's like we talked about this before, where we have a lead up letter framework that we use to launch studios, where, I mean, all that is basically an email every single week updating a waiting list on the progress of the build. So the purpose of that is obviously to build anticipation, excitement, get everybody kind of raring to go, signal your demand and all this kind of thing. The purpose of that isn't, okay, what time do I need to post those emails out? Like, that's irrelevant really in terms of the actual grander goal in play. So I think the more we can focus on what we're looking to achieve as opposed to the little tiny variables, that's kind of where I think focus needs to be. So focus on those big outcomes as opposed to those little things that don't perhaps move the needle of the business.
Yeah, we call them North Star metrics, don't we?
Yeah.
Hey, quick one from us. If you're enjoying this episode, you'll love our free weekly newsletter.
It's for current and aspiring studio owners who are looking for the latest growth hacks to sign up more members and keep them.
It's a quick 2-minute email covering the stuff we're testing in our own gyms.
So you'll be getting access to what's working today.
If you're interested, you can join 3,500 gym owners and go to thefitpreneur.com and subscribe.
That's thefitpreneur.com. Anyway, back to the episode.
Nothing to add to that. Number 7 is embrace feedback. And I think what we mentioned earlier about clients come first and some of the things we're going to change, we got that feedback earlier, and that was a really big thing that we need to change. So it goes to show how much we do embrace feedback. Ideally, it needs to be informed feedback.
Yeah, I would say
we've fallen into this trap before too.
So like feedback which is constrained in some way, in the sense of you're not just kind of asking for open-ended feedback. You're asking very direct questions which result in direct answers. And examples of that, you're not saying to somebody, "What can we do better here?" You would then say to somebody, "How can we improve the booking process on the app? Is there anything that could potentially be done to improve that part of the experience?" Because when you ask very constrained questions, you get constrained answers. Whereas if you ask open-ended questions, you just get open-ended answers that aren't perhaps informed, like you said. So I think, just being very intentional about the questions that you ask and the feedback that you want to attain, I think that's really important. But I mean, feedback as well. I've spoken to some studio owners, and you say, "Oh, have you asked for feedback recently?" They're like, "Oh no, I'm scared to." And I think then the question is, why are you scared?
Yeah,
and that the answer to that is probably why you need to ask for feedback.
There's a bigger reason. There's a bigger reason, definitely.
Those are the kind of the two big reasons why I think some studio owners don't ask, is that they know that either the feedback will be bad or they just don't care about improving. So either one of those isn't great. So I would always say, speak to your clients, speak to your members. I always make a point of trying to come to as many sessions as I can, actually getting involved in them. We also have the coffee club, which is for that purpose as well, where we can have a coffee with
that does
members.
Basically turn into a feedback coffee where everyone just talks at you about what they want to change.
Exactly. But I don't know about you, but I enjoy it. I like seeing areas that we perhaps improve, because oftentimes, like you just said there earlier, there are things that we haven't really thought about, which I think could actually make a huge difference. So that's number 7. Number 8, something we've always done, something we've always prided ourselves on, is investing in education. I don't think we would be where we are today if it were not for the education that we've acquired over the years.
We've invested on coaches. I worked this out the other day, and courses and things like that, nearly 100k.
Yeah, which it sounds like a
£100,000.
lot, but when you think you then gain the skill set to be able to own,
it's put us 10 years ahead.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah,
and again, not being scared about investing in education as well, and just kind of, if you lack a certain skill, trying to find the solution to that skill, and if you have to invest in it to obviously attain that skill quicker, then I would say go for it. Even if the skill isn't, even if it's like I need better graphics or better design of my social media or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean you need to go and learn how to use Canva or whatever. But it might mean that you need to learn how to manage a designer effectively in order to kind of make sure that they're on task and all this kind of thing. So whatever skill you're lacking, I would always look to find where you can solve that. And like we said, we always invest. Like, it's funny, if there's anything that I feel like I'm lacking, I'm like, I need to get better at like copy or copywriting or something like that. Here's a course, Jack. What do you think? Without even knowing the price, you're like, yeah, go for it. So I think we're quite good in that sense.
Number 9, this is a funny one because this annoys you. This grinds your gears the most.
The biggest, if I was to spend 30 minutes on the podcast ranting about something, it would be this.
Jake's got here, search Google first. Google it.
Yep.
Jake, why does it annoy you so much?
Yeah, so I look back at everything that I've learned over the 10 to 15 years of marketing. And I think what most people's response is when they come across a problem is to try and find the person who might give them a way out and almost to plant that responsibility on somebody else. Whereas again, it comes back to accountability. I always just used to use the search engine, which triggers, 15 million responses, because I kind of feel like that's going to get me an answer quicker. And things like, how do I change the color of this text, or how do I run an email campaign on Go High Level or something like that, or how do I email all of my contacts? That's a question that obviously we are qualified to answer, and we can answer, but you're going to find that answer out quicker. And not only that, it's going to register more if you actually learn how to do it yourself. And that just comes from throwing in a question into Google. And I would say Google obviously is the historic search engine, but I mean, we all have ChatGPT now, where I have been able to create spreadsheets and systems and automations with the help of ChatGPT in the last 6 months that would probably have taken me years before. And it's just from throwing in questions and getting answers back and tweaking things. And so I think there's a lot of power that comes from just Googling something. And I would always say that whenever you have a question, instead of defaulting to who can help solve this for me, just default to how can I source the answer for this myself? Because the minute you do that is the minute you're actually going to grow.
It just makes you a better business owner, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Number 10, my favorite, well, actually my second favorite behind clients come first. Tracking numbers. Data is everything. We are militant. I'd go as far as say, Jake, you are anal about this. Do you want to expand? We obviously have the daily metrics sheet all of our clients have as well, which we track everything from an acquisition standpoint, but we track everything else. Henry's got a new performance dashboard, so we track his work. We track our coach's work. We track pretty much everything in the business, and it's all centralized. So feel free to expand on it, but you can go into what we track if you want, Jake.
Well, I just think
how far you want to go.
It's one of those where I think you can get too much into it if there's certain data, metrics, whatever that you're tracking that perhaps don't need to be tracking. So I think one thing that we do is make sure that anything that we do measure on a daily basis is actually stuff which is, dependent on moving the business forward. But I just think without any data to support any of your actions or decisions or anything, you're flying blind. And then what happens is that you resort to just acting on emotion, which, if you're a studio owner and you've got multiple staff members and, all this kind of thing, and the only thing you have to go on to make any kind of decision in the business is your own thoughts, then I think, that could be a pretty bad thing.
And don't always think data is a spreadsheet as well. It's not. So like we track, for example, client morale.
Yeah.
With a traffic light system with a weekly text message to all of our clients, and that gives us the informed data to make sure they are where they need to be. And if anyone's unhappy, obviously we have the data to then use on Monday morning when we call them.
And not only that, like the data then becomes assets too. So like, for example, just from tracking client morale, we could then maybe look back at the last year and see how many people have voted, I'm loving it. And we could use that as a percentage to then use in our marketing. So like there's loads of different ways that you can use data to support really any aspect of the business, whether it comes to selling it, whether it comes to acquiring new members. It's just a good to have. And we always say, well, is that Peter Drucker quote, wasn't it? Of what gets measured gets managed. So
yes, you got it right.
Yeah.
I would also go as far to say, because we track client morale, when we get those responses back on the Sunday, we print screen all the great responses we get, put them into our comms with each studio with the coaches in there, and they get to see what a great job they're doing.
Yeah.
So their morale instantaneously goes up. So yeah, there's loads of positives behind tracking all kinds of numbers, but Jake's right. Like you got to be tracking the right data. Otherwise you could be wasting an awful lot of time. And I think that is subjective. Like people will want to track certain things. But in terms of what we track, we obviously track all of our acquisition numbers on a daily basis. We track client morale. We track output from the man on the floor over here, which he loves. And, that's why we do it, because it gets managed then. So
yeah.
I think we concluded, Jake. They're the 10 things.
Yeah, 10 traits. Hopefully, if you're listening to this, you're thinking, yeah, I boss every single one of those, which, good for you. We may have missed some, so make sure you obviously let us know. But just to roll through them really quickly again. Number 1, clients come first. Number 2, it's not just about your wallet. Number 3, no cutting corners. Number 4, accountability is key. Number 5, delegate with confidence. Number 6, focus on the big outcomes. Number 7, embrace feedback. 8, invest in education. Number 9, search Google first. And finally, number 10, make sure you're tracking your numbers. Those are the 10 successful traits of killer gym owners.
Cool. I'm going to go for a nap.
I'm going to go try and find my car.
Jake, that's fun. That's the pod. Cheers, guys.
See ya.